"30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a historical event that sent shockwaves around the globe, Vladislav Zubok offers a significant reinterpretation, challenging the prevailing narrative that its disintegration was inevitable. In his meticulously researched work, Collapse, The Fall of the Soviet Union, Zubok, a preeminent authority on the USSR and the Cold War, sheds light on the internal and external complexities that led to this pivotal moment in history. Born in Moscow and having spent considerable time in the United States teaching history, Zubok's unique perspective is informed by his extensive study and first-hand experiences. His notable contributions to the field include Inside the Kremlin's Cold War and A Failed Empire, the Soviet Union in the Cold War from Stalin to Gorbachev, among others. Now, as a professor at the London School of Economics and Political Science, Zubok continues to delve into the intricacies of Soviet history, offering nuanced insights that challenge conventional wisdom. Collapse emerges as a central work in understanding the fall of the Soviet Union, drawing on an impressive array of original archival sources. Zubok argues that the Soviet Union's downfall was not preordained, but was the result of a series of missteps and miscalculations, particularly under Mikhail Gorbachev's leadership. His reforms, aimed at modernizing and democratizing the Soviet state, inadvertently stripped the government of vital resources and stoked the flames of separatism. This analysis is further enriched by Zubok's examination of the United States' role in the Soviet Union's demise. While acknowledging that internal factors were primarily to blame, he highlights the extraordinary and often misunderstood influence of U.S. policies and actions, thereby offering a comprehensive overview of the international dynamics at play. In addition to his scholarly work, Zubok's involvement with the Wilson Center's History and Public Policy program and his contributions to the Washington History Seminar underscore his commitment to fostering a deeper understanding of historical events. His work, praised for its emotional engagement and thorough research, stands as a testament to the complexity of the Soviet Union's collapse and serves as a vital resource for anyone seeking to comprehend this momentous period in world history. Zubok's narrative is not just a recounting of historical facts, but an emotional journey through a time of great upheaval and change. His account challenges readers to reconsider long-held beliefs about the inevitability of the Soviet Union's collapse, highlighting the human elements of courage, folly, and missed opportunities that shape the course of history. Through Collapse, Zubok provides a lens through which the dramatic and contingent nature of the Soviet Union's end is vividly brought to life, offering profound insights into the events that led to the emergence of a new world order. In the years leading up to its collapse, the Soviet Union found itself at a crossroads, grappling with deep-seated economic problems and a political system resistant to change. The ascension of Mikhail Gorbachev to the helm of the Soviet state marked the beginning of a series of ambitious reforms aimed at addressing these systemic issues. Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, were radical departures from the Soviet norm, designed to modernize the economy and democratize the political structure. However, these reforms, though well-intentioned, had unintended consequences that would contribute significantly to the Soviet Union's downfall. Gorbachev's efforts to revitalize the Soviet economy and make the political system more transparent and accountable were met with mixed reactions. On one hand, they were seen as necessary steps toward addressing the inefficiencies and rigidities of the Soviet system. On the other, they exposed the depth of the systemic problems and weakened the central government's control over the republics. The push for greater openness allowed suppressed nationalisms and separatist movements to gain momentum, challenging the very foundation of the Soviet federal structure. The economic situation in the Soviet Union during this period was particularly dire. Years of financial mismanagement, coupled with a heavy military expenditure that drained the state's coffers, had left the economy in a precarious state. Gorbachev's attempts to restructure the economy only exacerbated these issues, leading to widespread shortages, a decrease in production, and a loss of confidence among the Soviet populace and the international community. The economy's dismal performance became a catalyst for further unrest, providing a fertile ground for separatist sentiments to flourish. As the Soviet Union's economic woes deepened, the central government found itself increasingly unable to exert its influence over the republics. The financial mismanagement under Gorbachev's watch was egregious, with resources being allocated inefficiently and corruption siphoning off much-needed funds. This economic instability, combined with the empowerment of nationalist movements through glasnost, created a volatile mix that the Soviet leadership struggled to contain. The prelude to the Soviet Union's collapse was thus characterized by a series of reforms that, while aimed at salvaging the state, inadvertently set it on a path to dissolution. The economic failings, stemming from decades of mismanagement, were brought to the fore, exposing the fragility of the Soviet system. As the republics began to assert their independence, the central government's inability to reassert control only hastened the Union's demise. This period of reform and instability laid the groundwork for the monumental changes that would soon sweep across the Soviet Union, reshaping the geopolitical landscape in the process. The unraveling of the Soviet Union, while influenced by external pressures, was fundamentally a consequence of internal dynamics that eroded the fabric of the state from within. The final years of the Soviet Union were marked by significant power struggles and ideological shifts that underscored the deep-seated instability within its political system. Central to understanding this tumultuous period is the examination of key figures whose actions and rivalries significantly impacted the course of Soviet history. Georgy Malenkov, who briefly succeeded Joseph Stalin after his death in March 1953, represents a pivotal figure in the narrative of the Soviet Union's internal discord. Malenkov's tenure as the leader of the Soviet Union was short-lived, but his role in the subsequent power struggles offers insight into the complexities of Soviet politics. Following Stalin's death, Malenkov initially emerged as a leading figure, assuming the dual roles of premier and the highest-ranking member of the Secretariat. However, his position at the apex of Soviet power was quickly challenged. Malenkov's ideological stance, particularly his advocacy for peaceful coexistence with the United States and a focus on consumer goods over heavy industry, placed him at odds with other members of the Soviet leadership. Nikita Khrushchev, in particular, emerged as a formidable rival. The power struggle between Malenkov and Khrushchev, which culminated in Malenkov's removal as premier in 1955 and his eventual marginalization within the party, exemplifies the intense factionalism that characterized the Soviet Union's political landscape during this period. This era of power struggles was not merely about personal rivalries. It reflected deeper ideological divides within the Communist Party. The debates over the direction of the Soviet economy, the approach to relations with the West, and the extent of political liberalization revealed a leadership deeply divided over the future of the Soviet state. These divisions were exacerbated by the policies of glasnost and perestroika, introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev in the mid-1980s, which further destabilized the existing power structures and unleashed forces that the leadership could neither predict nor control. The role of key figures, such as Malenkov, and the power struggles in which they were embroiled highlight the significant internal challenges that faced the Soviet Union in its final years. The inability of the Soviet leadership to forge a cohesive vision for the future, combined with the escalating demands for autonomy and independence from the republics, created a volatile political environment. It was within this context of political instability and ideological uncertainty that the Soviet Union ultimately found itself unable to withstand the pressures it faced, leading to its dissolution. As the Soviet Union teetered on the brink of collapse, it became increasingly clear that its downfall was not merely the result of external forces, but was deeply rooted in the domestic affairs that had long plagued the state. The power struggles and ideological shifts that defined the final years of the Soviet Union underscore the complexities of its collapse, revealing a state undone as much by its internal contradictions as by the pressures exerted from beyond its borders. The dissolution of the Soviet Union cannot be fully understood without examining the role of the United States, whose policies and actions exerted significant influence on the course of events. While the internal dynamics within the Soviet Union undeniably set the stage for its collapse, the strategic pressures applied by the United States and its promotion of democratic ideals played a critical role in shaping the environment in which these internal factors unfolded. During the final years of the Cold War, the United States, under the leadership of successive administrations, adopted a dual approach towards the Soviet Union. On one hand, it engaged in a significant military buildup, including the Strategic Defense Initiative, which aimed to protect the United States from ballistic missiles. This initiative, among others, placed enormous financial pressure on the Soviet Union to keep pace, exacerbating its already dire economic situation. The economic strain of maintaining military parity with the United States contributed to the urgency of Gorbachev's reforms and highlighted the unsustainable nature of the Soviet economy. On the other hand, the United States actively promoted democratic ideals and human rights, a policy that resonated deeply within the Soviet Union and its satellite states. The rhetoric of freedom and democracy, amplified by the global reach of Western media, served to embolden dissident movements within the Soviet bloc. The support for these movements, both overt and covert, undermined the legitimacy of the Soviet regime and encouraged demands for greater autonomy and freedom among the Soviet republics and Eastern European states. Furthermore, the United States played a significant diplomatic role, engaging in negotiations with the Soviet leadership that helped to ease tensions and foster an environment conducive to reform. The summits between Reagan and Gorbachev, for instance, were instrumental in building trust and opening channels of communication between the two superpowers. These interactions, while aimed at reducing the nuclear threat, also provided a platform for discussing broader issues of reform and liberalization within the Soviet Union. The United States' involvement in the events leading to the Soviet Union's end was multifaceted and complex. Its strategic pressures compounded the economic challenges facing the Soviet Union, while its promotion of democratic ideals galvanized movements that challenged the Soviet state's authority. Moreover, its diplomatic engagements with Soviet leaders played a crucial role in the peaceful resolution of the Cold War. In the aftermath of the Soviet Union's collapse, the United States emerged as the world's sole superpower, fundamentally altering the global balance of power. The implications of this shift continue to shape international relations, underscoring the lasting impact of the U.S. role in the end of the Cold War era. The interplay between the internal dynamics within the Soviet Union and the external pressures applied by the United States illustrates the complexity of the Soviet collapse. It was not solely the product of internal failings, nor exclusively driven by external forces, but rather the result of a confluence of factors that together sealed the fate of one of the 20th century's most formidable superpowers.